The coffee shop's fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Maya wiped down the same sticky table for the third time, her economics degree hanging uselessly on her apartment wall while she scrubbed dried syrup with a rag that smelled faintly of mildew. She had imagined so many different futures during those late nights in the library, but none of them included being 26 and drowning in $83,000 of student loan debt while earning minimum wage plus tips. "Table 7 needs a refill," her manager barked from behind the counter, and Maya nodded, forcing her mouth into something resembling a smile. Her feet ached in the cheap sneakers she had bought from a discount store, the soles already wearing thin after just 2 months. She grabbed the coffee pot and made her way to the corner booth where a man sat alone, his laptop open, his attention fixed on the screen with an intensity that made her hesitate before approaching. "More coffee?" she asked, her voice coming out softer than intended. He looked up, and she found herself staring into dark brown eyes that seemed to actually see her, not just glance past her the way most customers did. He was handsome in an understated way, with strong features and dark hair that looked like he had run his hands through it more than once. His clothes were casual but clearly expensive, the kind of effortless quality that money bought without trying. "Please," he said, pushing his cup toward her. "This place makes surprisingly decent coffee for a chain." "We try," Maya replied, pouring carefully to avoid splashing. "Can I get you anything else?" "Actually, yes." He leaned back in the booth, studying her with an expression she could not quite read. "Sit down for a minute. You look exhausted." Maya glanced nervously toward the counter where her manager was busy with the register. "I really should not, just for a second." "When was the last time you took a break?" Something in his tone made her pause. It was not flirtatious or demanding, just genuinely concerned, and that unfamiliar kindness made her throat tight. She slid into the opposite side of the booth, perching on the edge like she might need to bolt at any moment. "I'm fine," she said automatically, the same lie she told everyone. "You're not fine." He closed his laptop, giving her his full attention. "I've been coming here for 2 weeks, and I've watched you work every shift. You're here when I arrive at 7 in the morning, and you're still here when I leave at 9 at night." Heat crept up Maya's neck. She had noticed him too, this regular customer who always sat in the corner booth and never complained, never snapped his fingers for service, never left his table a disaster. But she had not realized he had been paying attention to her. "I pick up extra shifts," she admitted. "The money helps." "Helps with what?" The question was too personal, too direct, but exhaustion made her honest. "Student loans. I graduated 3 years ago with a degree I cannot use because every entry-level position wants 5 years of experience. So here I am, pouring coffee and trying not to think about how the interest keeps piling up faster than I can pay it down." His expression shifted, something like recognition flickering across his features. "What did you study?" "Economics. Ironic, right? I understand fiscal policy and market trends, but I cannot figure out how to save my own financial future." She laughed, but it came out bitter. "I'm sorry, you don't want to hear about my problems." "Actually, I do." He extended his hand across the table. "I'm Daniel Morrison." She shook his hand, noticing the calluses on his palm that seemed at odds with his expensive watch. "Maya Torres." "Maya." He said her name like he was testing how it felt. "How much do you owe?" The question was so blunt that she almost stood up and walked away. But something about the way he asked, without judgment or pity, made her answer. $83,417 as of this morning." Daniel was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. "You deserve better than this." "Excuse me, this." He gestured around the coffee shop, at the stained floors and the flickering lights, and the manager who was now glaring in their direction. You worked hard for your education. You did everything you were supposed to do, and now you're trapped in a cycle that's designed to keep you struggling. It's not right. Maya felt her defenses rising. I'm doing the best I can. I know you are. That's exactly my point. He pulled out his phone, tapping the screen a few times before turning it toward her. What if you didn't have to struggle anymore? What if someone paid off your loans? She stared at the screen, not understanding what she was looking at until the numbers came into focus. A bank account balance with more zeros than she could immediately count. Her eyes widened, darting back to his face. Who are you? I told you. Daniel Morrison. When she continued to stare blankly, he added, Morrison Property Development. We build commercial real estate across the Northeast. My father started the company 40 years ago, and I took over 5 years ago. The name clicked into place. She had seen it on buildings downtown, on construction signs. In the business section of newspapers, she sometimes skimmed during her breaks. Morrison Property Development was worth hundreds of millions, possibly more. You're that Daniel Morrison, she whispered. I'm just Daniel. But yes, I have money. More money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, and I want to use some of it to help you. Maya shook her head, pushing away from the table. No, I can't accept that. Why not? Because I don't know you, because that's insane. Because nothing is free, and I'm not naive enough to think you're making this offer without expecting something in return. He did not look offended, just thoughtful. You're right to be cautious, but I'm not asking for anything. I'm not trying to buy you or control you or put you in my debt. I just think you deserve a chance to actually use your degree and build the life you worked for. People don't just give away $80,000. I do. He met her eyes steadily. I've been where you are, not exactly the same circumstances, but I know what it's like to feel trapped. When my father died, the company was drowning in debt. I had to claw my way out, make impossible choices, sacrifice things I'll never get back. I swore that if I ever made it to the other side, I would help other people who were stuck in that same pit. So I'm your charity case. The words came out sharper than she intended, but she was too overwhelmed to soften them. No, you're someone who deserves better. There's a difference. Before Maya could respond, her manager's voice cut across the coffee shop. Torres breaks over, back to work. She stood automatically, her body moving through years of trained obedience even as her mind reeled. Daniel stood too, pulling a business card from his wallet and pressing it into her hand. Think about it. Call me when you're ready to talk. He smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something warm. I'll still be here tomorrow morning. I always order the same thing, black coffee and a blueberry muffin. Maya clutched the card so tightly that the edges bit into her palm as she walked back to the counter. She could feel her manager's disapproving stare, but for once, she did not care. Her mind was spinning with possibilities she was afraid to examine too closely, with the dangerous hope that maybe, just maybe, her life could be different. That night, she lay in bed staring at Daniel's business card propped against her phone. The apartment was quiet except for the drip of the kitchen faucet she could not afford to fix, and the muffled argument of her neighbors through the thin walls. She had looked him up online, scrolling through article after article about Morrison Property Development's latest projects, Daniel's business acumen, his reputation for being tough but fair. There were photos of him at charity galas and ribbon-cutting ceremonies, always in a sharp suit, always with that same serious expression. But there were no scandal stories, no whispers of inappropriate behavior or shady business deals. By all accounts, he was exactly what he claimed to be, a successful businessman who had built on his father's legacy and turned it into an empire. Still, Maya could not shake the feeling that accepting his offer would change everything in ways she could not predict. Money always came with strings, even when people promised it did not. She had learned that lesson from her own family, from the aunt who loaned her mother money and never let her forget it, from the scholarship that had seemed like a blessing until the requirements consumed her entire college experience. But the alternative was continuing to live like this, working 70-hour weeks just to make minimum payments on debt that never seemed to shrink. It was skipping meals to save money, avoiding the dentist because she could not afford the copay, watching her former classmates build careers and families while she stayed frozen in place. She picked up her phone and stared at Daniel's number for a long time before finally typing out a message. "I want to talk, but somewhere public, not the coffee shop." His response came within minutes, even though it was past midnight. "The park on 5th Street. Tomorrow at 2, I'll bring lunch." Maya read the message 3 times, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She was either making the best decision of her life or walking straight into a mistake she would regret forever. But at least she would be moving forward instead of staying trapped in this endless, exhausting present. Sleep did not come easily that night. The park was busy when Maya arrived the next afternoon, filled with joggers and families and people walking dogs. She spotted Daniel on a bench near the fountain, a paper bag beside him, his face tilted toward the sun. He looked different in the daylight, younger somehow, less like a corporate titan and more like a regular person enjoying a beautiful spring day. "You came," he said when he saw her approaching, standing up with a smile that made something flutter in her chest. "I came," she agreed, sitting down on the opposite end of the bench, maintaining careful distance between them. "But I haven't decided anything yet." "That's fair." He opened the paper bag and pulled out 2 sandwiches, offering her one. "Turkey and avocado. I took a guess on what you might like. There's also chips and fruit and some kind of fancy lemonade the deli guy recommended." Maya accepted the sandwich, surprised to find she was actually hungry. She had been too nervous to eat breakfast, and her shift at the coffee shop had been particularly brutal. "Thank you." They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, watching a group of children chase each other around the fountain while their parents chatted nearby. It felt strange and normal at the same time, like she was living in 2 realities at once. The one where she was a broke barista eating lunch in the park, and the one where a millionaire had just offered to change her entire life. "Tell me about your business," Maya said finally, needing to break the silence with something concrete. "How did you end up taking over from your father?" Daniel's expression clouded briefly. "I didn't plan to, at least not so soon." "I was working as a project manager, learning the business from the ground up like my father insisted. Then he had a heart attack on a construction site. He was only 58. I'm sorry." "Thank you." He crumpled up the empty sandwich wrapper, his movements precise and controlled. "The company was in trouble. My father had made some risky investments that hadn't paid off, and we were hemorrhaging money. The board wanted to sell, but I couldn't let that happen. Morrison Property Development was his legacy, his life's work. So I spent 3 years doing nothing but working. 18-hour days, 7 days a week. I restructured everything, renegotiated contracts, found new investors. Eventually, we turned it around. That must have been exhausting." It was. It also cost me my relationship, most of my friendships, and any semblance of work-life balance. I look back at that version of myself and barely recognize him. I was so focused on saving the company that I forgot to actually live. He turned to face her fully. "That's why I do this, Maya, why I help people when I can. Because I spent years of my life trapped by circumstances beyond my control, and I know how suffocating that feels." If I can give someone else a way out, why wouldn't I? Maya studied his face, searching for any sign of deception or hidden motives. But all she saw was sincerity, a genuine desire to help that seemed almost too good to be true. What do you get out of it? And please don't say nothing, because everyone gets something from their actions, even if it's just feeling good about themselves. He laughed, a genuine sound that made the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. You're right. I do get something. I get to know that I made a difference in someone's life. I get to feel like all those hours and sacrifices weren't just about accumulating wealth. And honestly, I get to meet interesting people like you, people who work incredibly hard and deserve more than what they've been given. That's still a terrible investment strategy. $80,000 for some warm feelings. Maybe, but I can afford terrible investment strategies. His expression softened. Look, I understand why you're skeptical. I would be too in your position. So how about this? Let me pay off your loans, no strings attached. If you want to disappear and never speak to me again after that, fine. If you want to grab coffee sometime and tell me about your life, also fine. The choice is entirely yours. Maya's throat felt tight. Why me? You said you've been coming to the coffee shop for 2 weeks. You must see lots of people struggling. I do, and I help when I can in different ways. But you're different. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. You have this light in you that hasn't been extinguished despite everything. I see the way you interact with customers, how you're genuinely kind even when you're exhausted. I see how you straighten the chairs and wipe down tables that aren't even in your section because you take pride in doing things right. Most people would have become bitter or given up by now. But you're still fighting, still showing up every day. That kind of resilience is rare. Heat flooded Maya's face. She was not used to being seen, really seen, in a way that went beyond her function as a server. You've been paying way too much attention to me. Guilty, he admitted with a slight smile. But I promise it's not creepy. I'm a people watcher by nature. You have to be in my business, understanding what motivates people, what they need, what they value. It helps me build better spaces, better communities. Maya finished her lemonade, using the time to organize her thoughts. Everything Daniel said made sense, and more terrifyingly, everything he said resonated with something deep inside her that desperately wanted to believe this could be real. If I say yes, how does this work? Do I have to sign something? Is there paperwork? Some paperwork, yes. I'll have my lawyer draw up a simple document stating that the money is a gift with no expectation of repayment or future obligation. You'll need to provide your loan information so we can pay the lender directly. The whole process should take less than a week. And that's it. You just write a check and my loans disappear. That's it. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the sun warm on her face and the butterflies rioting in her stomach. This was insane. This was impossible. This was exactly what she needed but was terrified to accept. Okay. Okay. Okay, yes. I'll let you pay off my loans. She opened her eyes and looked at him directly. But I want to be clear about something. I'm saying yes because I need help, not because I'm expecting anything else. I'm not interested in being someone's project or charity case or potential girlfriend. Daniel interrupted gently. Maya felt her face flush even hotter. I wasn't going to say that. But you were thinking it. He smiled, but there was something careful in his expression. For what it's worth, I wasn't thinking of you that way either. At least not primarily. Yes, you're beautiful and interesting and I enjoy talking to you. But this offer isn't contingent on you being interested in me romantically. I genuinely just want to help. Okay, good. Maya stood up, needing movement to process the enormity of what she had just agreed to. So what happens now? Now you give me your contact information and the details for your loan servicer. I'll have my lawyer start the paperwork tomorrow. In the meantime, try to relax. This is supposed to be a good thing, not something that keeps you up at night with worry." "Too late for that," Maya admitted. "But thank you, really. I don't know how to express what this means to me." "You don't have to express anything. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "When your loans are paid off and you're free to make choices based on what you want instead of what you can afford, don't forget this feeling. Don't forget what it was like to be trapped. And if you ever get the chance to help someone else, do it." Maya nodded, her eyes stinging with unexpected tears. "I promise." They exchanged phone numbers and email addresses, and Maya walked home in a daze. She kept expecting to wake up and discover the whole afternoon had been a dream, a stress-induced fantasy her exhausted brain had conjured. But her phone held Daniel's contact information, solid and real, proof that maybe her life was about to change in ways she had stopped letting herself imagine. The next week passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Daniel's lawyer, a brisk woman named Patricia who treated the whole transaction like it was the most normal thing in the world, guided Maya through every step. She asked questions, read every document carefully, half convinced there would be some hidden clause or unexpected requirement. But everything was exactly as Daniel had promised, a straightforward gift with no strings attached. Maya continued working at the coffee shop, partly because she still needed the income and partly because she could not quite believe this was real until the money actually transferred. Daniel still came in every morning, still ordered his black coffee and blueberry muffin. But now he also stayed longer, chatting with her during her breaks about everything from books to politics to their shared love of terrible reality television. "I'm mortified that I'm admitting this," he said one morning, leaning against the counter while she restocked napkins. "But I've watched every season of that dating show where they maroon people on an island." Maya laughed, the sound coming easier now than it had a week ago. "The one where half the couples break up before they even get off the island. That's the one. It's absolutely terrible television, and I cannot stop watching it. I respect that level of commitment to trash TV." She glanced around to make sure her manager was not watching, then added, "My guilty pleasure is those baking competition shows. I don't even bake, but I'll watch people construct elaborate sugar sculptures for hours." "We could watch together sometime," Daniel suggested casually, but there was something uncertain in his expression that made him look younger. "After your loans are paid off, of course. I don't want you to feel obligated." Maya's heart did a complicated flip in her chest. Over the past week, she had caught herself looking forward to Daniel's morning visits, watching the door until he arrived, feeling disappointed on the rare occasions he came later than usual. She told herself it was just gratitude, just her brain associating him with the incredible gift he was giving her. But somewhere deeper, in a place she was not quite ready to examine, she knew it was more than that. "I'd like that," she said, meeting his eyes. "Watching terrible television with you sounds nice." His smile transformed his entire face, and Maya felt that flip in her chest intensify into something warm and bright and terrifying. 3 days later, Patricia called with the news Maya had been both anticipating and struggling to believe would actually happen. "The transfer went through this morning. Your student loans are paid in full. You should receive confirmation from your loan servicer within 24 hours. Maya stood in the middle of her tiny apartment, phone pressed to her ear, unable to process what she was hearing. "They're gone, all of them, all of them. You're officially debt-free." After she hung up, Maya sat on her couch and cried. She cried for all the years of stress and fear and exhaustion. She cried for the opportunities she had missed, because she could not afford to take unpaid internships or move to cities with better job markets. She cried for the version of herself that had walked across the graduation stage so full of hope, not knowing how hard the next few years would be. And she cried from relief so profound, it felt like a physical weight lifting from her shoulders. When the tears finally stopped, she picked up her phone and texted Daniel, "It's done. I don't know how to thank you." His response came immediately. "You don't have to thank me, but if you want to celebrate, I know a good Italian place that makes terrible but amazing fettuccine Alfredo. My treat. Not as your benefactor, just as someone who would like to have dinner with you." Maya stared at the message for a long time. She could say no, keep this relationship purely transactional, maintain the boundaries she had been so careful to establish. Or she could say yes, acknowledge the connection that had been building between them, take a risk on something that felt both terrifying and inevitable. She typed back, "Pick me up at 7, and bring your appetite. I haven't had real Alfredo in 3 years." Daniel arrived exactly on time, wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, looking somehow more attractive in casual clothes than he did in his expensive suits. Maya had changed outfits 4 times before settling on a simple blue dress she had bought years ago for a job interview that never led anywhere, paired with the only nice shoes she owned. "You look beautiful," Daniel said when she opened the door, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The restaurant was a small, family-owned place in a neighborhood Maya had never explored, with red-checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles, and the smell of garlic so strong it made her mouth water. They were seated in a corner booth, and the waiter brought bread and olive oil without them having to ask. "I've been coming here since college," Daniel explained, tearing off a piece of bread. "My roommate was Italian and his grandmother owned this place. She would feed us whenever we showed up looking pathetic, which was frequently. The fettuccine Alfredo is technically not authentic Italian, but it's the best comfort food in the city. It smells amazing." Maya looked around the cozy space, noticing the family photos on the walls and the obvious love put into every detail. "Thank you for bringing me here. Thank you for coming." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "I want to be clear about something. I asked you to dinner because I enjoy your company and I want to spend more time with you. But if you're not interested in this being anything more than 2 people sharing a meal, that's okay. The loan payoff isn't connected to this, or to anything else. You don't owe me your time or attention or affection." Maya appreciated his directness, the way he laid everything out clearly instead of dancing around implications. "I am interested," she admitted, her heart racing, "but I'm also scared. A week ago, you were a customer at the coffee shop where I work. Now you've completely changed my life and I'm sitting across from you at dinner and I don't know how to process any of this. That's fair. We can take this as slowly as you need. We can just be friends who watch terrible television and eat overpriced pasta, or we can see if this could become something more. The choice is yours, Maya. I'm not going anywhere." The waiter arrived with their food before she could respond, and for a while they just ate and talked about safe topics. The food, the restaurant, funny stories from their respective jobs. But gradually, the conversation deepened, and Maya found herself telling Daniel things she had not shared with anyone in years. She talked about her father who had died when she was 12, leaving her mother to raise 3 kids alone. She talked about being the first person in her family to go to college, the pressure and pride that came with that distinction. She talked about how isolating it had been to watch her former classmates move forward with their careers while she stayed stuck. Daniel listened with the same focused attention he had given her in the coffee shop, asking questions that showed he was genuinely interested. not just making conversation. In turn, he shared more about his own life, the complicated relationship with his father who had been brilliant and demanding in equal measure, the loneliness of being at the top of a company where everyone either wanted something from him or feared him, the way success sometimes felt hollow when there was no one to share it with. "I'm 32, he said as they lingered over dessert, "and I've spent the last 5 years building a company and a reputation. But I've been so focused on work that I've let everything else slide. My mother keeps asking when I'm going to settle down and give her grandchildren. My few remaining friends have stopped inviting me to things because I always cancel at the last minute due to work emergencies. I look at people like you, who still have that fight and passion despite everything, and I wonder if I've lost something important along the way." "You haven't lost it," Maya said quietly. "You just redirected it for a while, but it's still there. I see it in the way you talk about your projects, how you want to build spaces that matter to communities. I see it in your decision to help people like me. That's not the action of someone who's lost their passion." He reached across the table and took her hand, his touch warm and solid. "You're remarkable, you know that," Maya's breath caught. "I'm really not, I'm just trying to survive." "No, you're trying to live, there's a difference." His thumb traced gentle circles on her palm, sending sparks up her arm. "Most people in your situation would have given up or become bitter, but you're still kind, still hopeful, still showing up every day ready to fight. That's remarkable." She did not know what to say to that, so she just held his hand and let herself feel the warmth of connection, of being seen and valued for who she was rather than what she could provide. It was intoxicating and terrifying, and she wanted more of it. When Daniel drove her home later that night, he walked her to her apartment door like they were in an old movie. The hallway light was broken, leaving them in shadows, and Maya's heart pounded so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I had a wonderful time tonight," Daniel said, his voice low and warm in the darkness. "Me too." She hesitated, then added, "Would you like to do this again sometime?" "I would love that. Actually, I have a work event next Saturday. It's a fundraising gala for a children's hospital. Normally, I go alone and spend the whole evening making small talk with people I barely know. But if you would consider coming with me, it might actually be enjoyable." A gala. Maya's mind immediately went to her sparse closet. "I don't think I have anything appropriate to wear to something like that. I'll take care of it. And before you protest, this isn't about the loans or charity. I'm inviting you as my date, and it's traditional for the person doing the inviting to ensure their date has what they need. If the situation were reversed, and you were inviting me somewhere that required specific attire, you would do the same." Maya wanted to argue, but she also desperately wanted to say yes, to have more time with this man who made her feel like she was finally stepping into the life she had always imagined for herself. "Okay, but nothing too expensive, I mean it," Daniel smiled. "I'll restrain myself. Though I should warn you that my definition of not too expensive might be different from yours. I'm terrified to find out what that means." He laughed, and then his expression shifted into something more serious. He raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her cheek with a gentleness that made her chest ache. "Can I kiss you?" Maya nodded, not trusting her voice, and then his lips were on hers, soft and sure and perfect. The kiss was brief, just a gentle pressure and the hint of something deeper, but it sent electricity through her entire body. When he pulled back, she had to resist the urge to pull him back down for more. "Good night, Maya," he whispered. "Good night," she managed. And then he was walking back down the hallway, and she was letting herself into her apartment, and her lips were still tingling from where he had kissed her. She touched her fingers to her mouth, smiling in the darkness, and let herself admit what she had been avoiding for days. She was falling for Daniel Morrison, and she had no idea how to protect her heart from the inevitable complications that would come with loving someone from such a different world. The dress arrived 3 days later in a garment bag that looked more expensive than her entire wardrobe combined. Maya unzipped it with trembling fingers and gasped when she saw what was inside. The gown was a deep emerald green that would complement her skin tone perfectly, with delicate beading along the bodice and a flowing skirt that looked like something from a fairy tale. There were also shoes, elegant heels that fit perfectly, and a small clutch purse in a coordinating color. She called Daniel immediately. "This is too much. It's perfect," he countered. "I knew it would be the right color the moment I saw it." "Daniel, this must have cost." "It doesn't matter what it cost. What matters is that you'll feel confident and beautiful at the gala. Please, Maya. Let me do this for you." She wanted to argue, but the truth was that the dress was stunning, and the thought of wearing it made her feel like Cinderella preparing for the ball. "Thank you. It's beautiful." "Not as beautiful as you'll be in it. I'll pick you up at 6 on Saturday." Maya spent the next few days in a state of nervous anticipation. She worked her shifts at the coffee shop, but her mind was elsewhere, imagining the gala and what it would be like to step into Daniel's world. She researched the event online, learning it was one of the most prestigious fundraisers in the city, attended by business leaders and politicians and socialites. The thought of being surrounded by people from that world made her stomach churn with anxiety. On Saturday afternoon, she dedicated hours to getting ready. She washed and styled her hair, applied makeup with more care than usual, and finally slipped into the emerald gown. When she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked elegant, sophisticated, like someone who belonged at fancy galas instead of behind a coffee shop counter. Daniel's expression when she opened the door confirmed that the effort had been worth it. His eyes widened, and for a moment he just stood there, staring at her with an intensity that made her blush. "You're stunning," he said finally. "Absolutely stunning." He looked pretty incredible himself in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that emphasized his broad shoulders and made him look like he had stepped out of a magazine. Maya suddenly understood why people talked about men in formal wear with such reverence. The gala was held at a historic hotel downtown, with crystal chandeliers and marble floors and an atmosphere of understated wealth. Maya felt her anxiety spike as they entered the ballroom, surrounded by women in designer gowns and men in expensive suits. Everyone seemed to know each other, greeting one another with practiced ease while she stood beside Daniel feeling like an imposter. But Daniel never left her side. He introduced her to everyone they encountered, always including her in conversations, his hand steady on the small of her back providing silent reassurance. He explained who people were and what they did, giving her context so she did not feel completely lost. And when someone asked what she did for a living, he answered before she could stumble through an explanation. "Maya has a degree in economics from State University. She's currently exploring opportunities in the private sector." The way he said it made it sound true, made it sound like her years of pouring coffee were just a temporary pause rather than a dead end. As the evening progressed, Maya began to relax. The food was incredible, the champagne was excellent, and Daniel was attentive without being overbearing. They danced to the live band, and he held her close, his hand warm on her waist, and she let herself enjoy the moment instead of worrying about everything that could go wrong. "Thank you for coming tonight," Daniel said as they swayed together. "I know this isn't easy being thrown into this world." "It's intimidating," Maya admitted. "Everyone here seems so confident, so comfortable, like they've never questioned whether they belong somewhere. Trust me, half these people are faking it. Wealth and success don't magically make you secure in yourself. They just give you better clothes to hide your insecurities in. He pulled back slightly to look at her. But you have nothing to be insecure about. You're the most genuine person in this room. That's worth more than any amount of money or connections. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. How do you always know exactly what to say? I don't. I just say what I'm thinking when I'm around you, and somehow it seems to work out. He smiled, then grew more serious. Maya, I need to tell you something. These past few weeks with you have been the best I've had in years. You make me laugh. You challenge me. You remind me that there's more to life than quarterly earnings and construction schedules. I'm falling for you, and I need you to know that before this goes any further. Her heart felt too big for her chest. I'm falling for you too. Which terrifies me because our lives are so different and I don't know how to navigate that. We'll figure it out together. I don't care about the differences. I care about you, your kindness, your strength, your terrible taste in reality television. He grinned. Everything else is just details we can work through. Maya stood on her toes and kissed him, right there in the middle of the dance floor with hundreds of people around them. She did not care who was watching or what they might think. All that mattered was Daniel, and the way he made her feel like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The kiss deepened, and she felt him smile against her lips before he pulled back, his eyes bright with happiness. I take it that's a yes to figuring things out together. That's a definite yes. They stayed at the gala for another hour, but Maya barely noticed anyone else. She was lost in Daniel, in the way he looked at her like she was the only person in the room, in the future that was starting to take shape in her mind. A future that included this man who had seen her at her lowest and offered not pity, but partnership. When they finally left, Daniel drove her home, but neither of them seemed ready for the night to end. They sat in his car outside her apartment building, talking and laughing until the early hours of the morning. He told her about the project his company was working on, a mixed-use development that would include affordable housing alongside commercial space. She shared her ideas about economic policy and community development, surprised to find he listened seriously and asked thoughtful questions. "You should work for me," Daniel said suddenly. Maya's eyes widened. "What?" "Work for Morrison Property Development. We need someone with your background and perspective on our community impact team. You would evaluate our projects through an economic lens, ensuring we're actually benefiting the neighborhoods we build in, not just extracting value from them." "Daniel, I can't." "Why not?" "You have the degree and the intelligence. You care about communities and people. And you're not afraid to challenge conventional wisdom, which is exactly what I need. The position is real, Maya. I've been trying to fill it for months, but everyone who applies just tells me what they think I want to hear. You would actually make a difference." Maya's mind raced. This was an incredible opportunity, the kind of job she had dreamed about when she first graduated. But accepting felt complicated, tangled up with their personal relationship and the money he had already given her. "I don't want you to feel obligated to offer me a job." "I'm not obligated. I'm being strategic. You're exactly what my company needs, and I would be an idiot not to try to recruit you." He took her hand. "But I understand if you need time to think about it, or if you want to apply elsewhere first. Prove to yourself that you can get a job on your own merits. I'll support whatever you decide." "Can I think about it?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." They kissed goodnight, and Maya floated up to her apartment feeling like her entire life had transformed in the space of a few weeks. From drowning in debt and working minimum wage to being debt-free with a promising relationship and a potential dream job. It felt too good to be true. like a bubble that would inevitably burst. But as the days passed and Daniel continued to be steady and genuine, never pressuring her about the job or rushing their relationship, Maya began to believe that maybe this was real. Maybe good things could happen to people who worked hard and stayed hopeful. Maybe she deserved this happiness after years of struggle. She gave her notice at the coffee shop, and her manager barely blinked, already moving on to interview replacements. Her coworkers were more enthusiastic, genuinely happy for her even as they complained about having to cover her shifts. On her last day, Maya walked out of the coffee shop for the final time and felt a weight lift that she had not even fully realized she was carrying. Daniel took her out to celebrate, and over dinner at a restaurant with food she could not pronounce, Maya made her decision. I want to take the job. Not because we're together, but because it's what I want to do. I want to work on projects that matter, use my degree to actually help people. And if it doesn't work out, if I'm terrible at it, or if working together ruins our relationship, then at least I'll know I tried. His smile could have lit up the entire restaurant. You're going to be amazing, and for what it's worth, I think working together will make us stronger, not weaker. We both care about the same things. We both want to build something meaningful. When do I start? Whenever you're ready. We'll do this properly. Official interview with HR, competitive salary, all the normal procedures. I'm not going to be your boss directly. You'll report to the VP of Community Development. But we'll work closely together on projects. Maya felt excitement bubble up in her chest, bright and effervescent. This was happening. Her life was actually changing, and not through luck or chance, but because someone had seen her potential and given her an opportunity to prove herself. The interview process was thorough and professional, and Maya was offered the position based on her own qualifications. The salary was more than double what she had been making at the coffee shop, enough to actually save money and start building a real life. Her first day was both terrifying and exhilarating, meeting her new team and learning about the projects she would be evaluating. Daniel kept his distance at work, treating her with the same professional respect he showed everyone else. But during lunch breaks and after hours, they were together constantly. He took her to museums and concerts and hole-in-the-wall restaurants he had discovered over years of exploring the city. She introduced him to her friends and her family, and he charmed them all with his genuine interest and lack of pretension. Maya's mother pulled her aside one evening after Daniel had joined them for dinner. "He's good for you. I can see how happy you are." "I am happy, Mom. Happier than I've been in years. Just promise me something. Don't lose yourself in him. You worked so hard to get where you are. Make sure you're building your own life, not just fitting into his." The advice stuck with Maya, and she made a conscious effort to maintain her own identity even as she fell deeper in love with Daniel. She pursued her own interests, maintained her friendships, threw herself into her work with passion and dedication. The projects she evaluated became better because of her input, and she gained a reputation within the company as someone who asked difficult questions and pushed for more comprehensive community impact. 6 months into her new job, Maya was leading a presentation to the board about a proposed development in a historically underserved neighborhood. She had spent weeks researching, talking to residents, analyzing economic data. Her recommendation was clear. The project needed significant modifications to truly benefit the community rather than displacing existing residents. Daniel sat at the head of the table, his expression neutral as she presented her findings. Some board members pushed back, arguing her recommendations would reduce profit margins. But Maya stood her ground, presenting data and testimonials that supported her position. When the vote came, the board approved the modifications she had suggested, and Daniel gave her a small nod of approval that meant everything. Afterward, he found her in her office. "You were brilliant in there. You didn't back down even when Wilson was being aggressive with his questions." "I was terrified," Maya admitted, "but I knew I was right. The data supported everything I said. I'm proud of you, not as your boyfriend, but as someone who respects the hell out of your work." He closed the office door and crossed to her desk. "Though as your boyfriend, I would very much like to take you out to celebrate. Somewhere fancy where we can dress up and drink expensive wine and I can stare at you across the table like a besotted idiot." Maya laughed. "That sounds perfect. Though you should know that I'm always going to push back on projects that don't meet community impact standards, even if it means lower profits. I would be disappointed if you didn't. That's exactly why I hired you. Well, why the company hired you. I'm definitely biased in your favor for other reasons." He pulled her up from her chair and into his arms. "I love you, Maya. I don't think I've actually said those words yet, but I do. I love your passion and your integrity and the way you make me want to be better." Her heart swelled. "I love you too. Even though you still watch that terrible island dating show and refuse to admit it's the worst television ever made. It's excellent television, and I will die on that hill." They kissed, and Maya felt the rightness of this moment, of this relationship, of the life they were building together. It was not perfect. They argued sometimes about work and money and how to balance their different backgrounds. But they always talked through their disagreements, always came back to the foundation of love and respect they had built. A year after they first met, Daniel took Maya back to the park where they had eaten sandwiches and made tentative decisions about trust and possibility. It was a beautiful spring day, and the fountain sparkled in the sunlight while children played nearby. "I've been thinking about that first conversation we had," Daniel said as they sat on the same bench, "when you were so skeptical of my offer to help. I was convinced you had ulterior motives." "Did I, though? Because looking back, I think I was already half in love with you even then. I just didn't recognize it yet." He shifted to face her more fully. "You've changed my life, Maya. You've made me better, pushed me to think beyond profit margins and think about actual impact. You've reminded me that success means nothing if you're not sharing it with someone who matters." "Daniel, let me finish." He slid off the bench onto one knee, and Maya's breath caught. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a ring that caught the sunlight and sent sparkles dancing across the grass. "I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're going to be in my life permanently. Marry me, Maya. Build this life with me. Let's make something beautiful together." Tears streamed down Maya's face as she nodded frantically. "Yes, yes, of course yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly, just like everything else about them. They kissed while people in the park applauded, and Maya felt like her heart might burst from happiness. This man who had seen her struggling and offered help without expecting anything in return, who had given her not just financial freedom but the space to discover who she could be without the weight of debt crushing her potential. He loved her, and she loved him, and they were going to build a life together. The wedding was smaller than Daniel's family expected, and larger than Maya had imagined. A compromise that reflected how they approached everything, with communication and respect for each other's needs. They got married in a garden ceremony surrounded by family and friends, and Maya wore a dress that made her feel like a queen. Daniel cried when he saw her walking down the aisle, and his voice shook when he said his vows, promising to love and support her for the rest of their lives. "You deserve everything good this world has to offer," he said, holding both her hands. "You deserve love and happiness and success. You deserve to wake up every morning knowing you're valued and cherished, and I'm going to spend every day making sure you know how much you mean to me." Maya's own vows came from the deepest part of her heart. "You saw me when I was invisible. You believed in me when I had stopped believing in myself. You gave me not just money, but hope, the chance to build the life I had always dreamed of. I promise to love you, challenge you, and stand beside you through everything. We're going to build something amazing together, and I'm so grateful I get to do it with you." Their first year of marriage was an adventure in learning to combine their lives fully. They moved into a house that was big enough for both of them, but not so ostentatious that Maya felt uncomfortable, in a neighborhood that was diverse and vibrant. Maya continued to excel at her job, becoming director of community impact and leading initiatives that genuinely improved the lives of people in the neighborhoods where Morrison Property Development built. Daniel scaled back his hours, learning to delegate and trust his team so he could spend more time with his wife. They traveled, explored new hobbies together, hosted dinner parties where Maya's family mixed with Daniel's business associates in ways that felt natural and right. They argued sometimes, usually about work-life balance or how much money was appropriate to spend on various things. But they always worked through their disagreements, always came back to the love that had brought them together. 2 years into their marriage, Maya discovered she was pregnant. She told Daniel over breakfast on a random Tuesday morning, unable to wait for a more romantic moment because she was bursting with the news. "I'm pregnant," she blurted out while he was reading something on his tablet. He looked up, his expression cycling through confusion, shock, and then pure joy in the space of seconds. "You're pregnant. We're having a baby. We're having a baby." Daniel was around the table in an instant, pulling her into his arms and spinning her around while she laughed and told him to be careful. He set her down gently, his hands immediately going to her still flat stomach with a reverence that made her eyes sting with tears. "We're going to be parents," he said wonderingly. "We're going to have a family. Are you happy?" Happy doesn't even begin to cover it. "Maya, this is everything. You're everything." Their daughter was born on a snowy December morning with her mother's dark hair and her father's eyes. They named her Sophia Grace, and she was perfect in every way. Daniel held her with the same careful intensity he brought to everything important in his life, and Maya watched her husband become a father with a love so profound, it sometimes made her cry. "You deserve better than this," Daniel had told her years ago in a coffee shop, and she had not believed him then. But looking at her life now, at her husband cradling their daughter while snow fell softly outside the hospital window, at the career she loved and the home they had built and the future stretching bright ahead of them, Maya finally understood what he had meant. She had deserved the chance to live without the constant weight of debt and fear. She had deserved to be seen and valued for who she was. She had deserved love, real and deep and transformative. And because Daniel had seen that before she could see it herself, because he had offered help without expecting anything in return, they had built something neither of them could have created alone. A life full of love and purpose, and the kind of happiness that came from facing challenges together and coming out stronger on the other side. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked softly, careful not to wake the sleeping baby in his arms. "How lucky I am. How different my life could have been if you hadn't walked into that coffee shop. I'm the lucky one. You changed everything for me, Maya. You gave me purpose beyond building and profit. You gave me a family and a reason to leave the office before midnight. You gave me a life worth living." Sophia stirred in his arms, making small baby sounds, and they both watched her with the awe of new parents who still could not quite believe this tiny person belonged to them. Maya leaned against Daniel's shoulder, feeling his warmth and strength, and let herself simply be grateful for everything they had, Years later, when Sophia was old enough to understand, they would tell her the story of how they met. They would explain that sometimes people struggled, that life was not always fair, and that being in a position to help others was both a privilege and a responsibility. They would teach her to see people the way Daniel had learned to see them, not as statistics or charity cases, but as individuals with potential who sometimes just needed a chance. But for now, in this quiet hospital room with snow falling outside and their daughter sleeping peacefully, Maya and Daniel just held each other and their baby and marveled at the life they had created. A life built on a foundation of unexpected kindness, nurtured by genuine love, and sustained by the deep respect they had for each other. Maya thought back to that exhausted, desperate version of herself who had been wiping down tables and drowning in debt, who had been too tired to hope for anything better. She wished she could tell that woman what was coming, that the handsome stranger in the corner booth would change everything, that accepting help was not weakness but wisdom, that love could come from the most unexpected places and transform everything it touched. But maybe that woman had known, somewhere deep down. Maybe that was why she had said yes to Daniel's impossible offer, why she had taken the risk of trusting someone who seemed too good to be true. Maybe some part of her had recognized that this was her chance, her moment to step into the life she deserved. "I love you," she whispered to Daniel, the words feeling both inadequate and perfect. "I love you too," he replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Forever." Sophia yawned and stretched, her tiny fingers curling and uncurling, and Maya felt her heart expand to hold even more love than she thought possible. This was her family. This was her life. This was everything she had worked for and dreamed of, and never quite believed she would actually have. And it all started because a millionaire saw a struggling barista and decided she deserved better. Because he offered help without strings, gave freely without expecting anything in return, and in doing so, opened the door to a love story neither of them could have predicted. Maya Torres, who had once believed she would spend her entire life paying off student loans and pouring coffee, was now a mother, a wife, a director at a company that made a real difference in communities. She had everything she had ever wanted and more, and she woke up every morning grateful for the chance to live this beautiful, complicated, wonderful life. The snow continued to fall outside, blanketing the city in white, and in the hospital room, a family held each other close and looked toward a future bright with possibility. This was not the end of their story. It was just the beginning of the next chapter, one they would write together with love and intention, and the deep knowledge that they were exactly where they belonged. Years would bring new challenges and new joys. Sophia would grow into a smart, compassionate child, who inherited her mother's determination and her father's kindness. Morrison Property Development would continue to expand, but always with community impact at its core, thanks to Maya's influence and Daniel's willingness to prioritize people over profit. They would have another child, a son named Lucas, who would complete their family in ways they had not known they needed. But the foundation would always remain the same. A chance encounter, a generous offer, and two people brave enough to build something real from an impossible beginning. Maya would never forget where she came from, and she would spend the rest of her life paying forward the kindness that had transformed her world. She established a scholarship fund for students struggling with debt, worked with nonprofits to provide financial literacy education, and never missed an opportunity to help someone who reminded her of herself in that coffee shop. Exhausted, desperate, but still fighting. And Daniel would never forget the woman who had reminded him that wealth meant nothing if it was not used to make a difference. She had given him purpose and love, and a family that grounded him, kept him focused on what truly mattered. Together, they built a life that honored both their pasts and their dreams for the future, proving that sometimes the best stories start with someone simply saying, "You deserve better than this," and meaning it with their whole heart.